to another edition of the Success and Happiness podcast, guys.
And buckle up, because today we've got a true titan of the triathlon world joining us, the one and only Greg Benett. Born and raised in Sydney, Australia, Greg's talent for endurance sports was undeniable. He dominated the scene, racking up an impressive 2 ITU World Series titles, a prestigious Triathlon World Championship title, and a whopping 6 World Cup titles. But his achievements go way beyond trophies. Greg stood on the podium a staggering 23 times out of 82 World Cup races, a testament to his consistent excellence. He even qualified for the Olympics twice, in 2004 and 2008, with a thrilling 4th place finish in 2004. Greg didn't just compete, he redefined success. In 2007, he conquered the triathlon world by winning all 5 races of the Lifetime Fitness Grand Slam City Series in the US, the richest triathlon prize purse ever offered. And that was no fluke, because he dominated the series 3 consecutive years, 2006, 7, and 8. This dedication and skill earned him the coveted title of Triathlete of the Year in both 2003 and 2007 by Triathlete magazine, further solidifying his legendary status. Greg was voted one of the top 15 greatest athletes of all time by Inside Triathlon magazine in 2012. Greg's passion for sport spanned a remarkable 27 years. During that time, he competed in over 500 professional triathlons and emerged victorious in over 100 international races. But Greg's story doesn't end there. He shares his life and passion with his wife, Laura Benett, a fellow US Olympic triathlete. Together, they've been dubbed the world's fittest couple, and their dedication to the sport is truly inspiring. So before we start, I just want to give Laura a bit of spotlight, another triathlon powerhouse. Her dedication is truly awe-inspiring. I love the story about 12-year-old Laura practically dragging her dad out of bed at 4:30 a.m. for swim practice. Swimsuit on, goggles in place. She wouldn't let anyone else stop her getting to the water first, and I can relate to that. But Laura's story goes far beyond early morning wake-up calls. She didn't just follow the flow, she carved her own path. This self-driven athlete found her purpose, ultimately representing the USA at multiple Olympics. Beijing 2008 saw her leave it all on the course, securing a phenomenal 4th place finish. And let's not forget her well-deserved title of Triathlete of the Year. Laura's journey is a testament to the power of passion and dedication. She took control of her destiny and became an inspiration to athletes everywhere. That's the kind of fire we love to celebrate on this show. So Greg, welcome to the show. We're excited to deep dive into this incredible journey after that very long introduction.
Oh, mate. Well, thank you for all of that. It's so many so many great memories. Honestly, it feels like a lifetime ago. It almost feels like a different person, if I must be honest. You know, I've been retired 8 years coming up now. And those numbers and those events that you bring up, they're such fond memories, right? Yeah. And I especially love that you brought up Laura, because I shared so much of that with her. In fact, she was the real catalyst for my career. I'd been a professional for probably 10 years previous. And then when we got together, it was like we leveled up. Yeah. Kind of, it was like having that relationship with her. We both took off together. And so it's really cool that in an introduction, you mentioned Laura, you've got me on the show, but I'm not who I am without her. So yeah. It's very cool. So very flattering. I really appreciate you for going a bit down memory lane there with me. It's very cool. So I appreciate being on your show, Colin. Really.
No, that's cool. Thank you. So just to start off, what kind of influenced you in triathlon when you were young? Did you have like school friends and that sort of thing who were in triathlon, or what sort of led you down that path?
Yeah, this was the mid 80s. And I was a 14-year-old, kid still trying to find his way, loved sports, loved soccer, loved rugby, sailing, surfing, whatever it was. I was into it. Had an older brother who was faster, stronger, played first 15 rugby, was, stroke of the first 4 at the boat shed. I went down to the boat shed and they said, Greg, you're too small. You're going to be a coxswain. So I was a coxswain. That's that little guy down the back of the boat that steers and yells at everybody. And then when I wanted to be a rugby player like him, and, I was in the 13Es, 14Es, it was a rugby school, and went down to the I's or something. It wasn't terrible that I was in the E's, but I was certainly not ever in that A's, B's, C's. And then it was, I did love my running. I could run and not get tired or as tired as many of the others. I could keep going longer. And it was in 1986, and a couple of mates of mine said, "Hey, there's this thing called a triathlon out of the Nepean River, west of Sydney. Greg, you're a runner. You know, I was running the 800 at school. Why don't you do the run?" It was a 14-kilometer run, but so just for American listeners, about 9 miles. And
it's quite a long way for a 14-year-old.
Yeah, for a untrained 14-year-old. But I was like, yeah, why not? And when we got out there, the guy that was going to be doing the swim, he had a bit of an asthma attack. I would call it more of a panic attack, to be honest. And it was a 800-meter half-mile swim. And I was like, okay, you know, I'll do it. You know, my mate who rides the bike said, well, Greg, you surf a bit. You should be able to swim 800 meters. And no swimming training, like none, zero. And that 800 meters it was brutal. I remember I came out of the water second last in the relay section of the event. And then my mate went off and did the bike. And then I took off and did the run. And the run was painful, really painful, but I got through it. And I remember just being around all these amazing people. And it's like I've said on my show quite often, it's like it's the people of triathlon that makes the sport outstanding. I can't say I ever loved swimming, biking, and running. Like I didn't love them. I don't hate them. I'm not Agassi with tennis. I'm kind of, I don't mind swimming, biking, and running, and I love to push myself, and I love that feeling of going beyond where I've been before. But it was really the people, you know, and all of a sudden, for an insecure kid, teenage kid, which we all are, you know, trying to find our way in high school, and suddenly I found something I could really hang my hat on. And I found triathlon to be the great equalizer. You know, Balmoral Triathlon Club started up, and I could be going for a Wednesday night run with, you know, the CEO of a major marketing company in Sydney. And in that same run is the janitor in the building that works at the same marketing. Or it was the high school kid and, you know, the 65, 70-year-old retiree. And it was the great equalizer. And I found my home. It was really a place where I wasn't just able to flourish as an athlete. I was able to flourish as a human being. I was able to mature in the right group of people that are all just trying to get the most out of life, you know, people that are all wanting to look beyond where they've been before, that kind of mentality. And so from 14, I was hooked. After that relay, I got a bike for Christmas soon after and started biking. And, you know, early 87, I was doing races straight into the Olympic distance. And, you know, that was it, mate. I was on my way. I never loved training, but I loved racing. So it took me a little while to catch up because I was never doing the actual work that I needed to do. But I just got into the sport. I loved all the gear. You know, this was mid to late 80s and all the neon pinks and greens, and we're all in our Speedos and budgie smugglers, as we call them in Australia. And, you know, it was just like everything was, you know, disc wheels were coming and aero bars and clipless pedals, and there was so much tech, and it was just a really vibrant time in the sport. And I'm so grateful for the timing. You know, it's like Malcolm Gladwell says in his books, you know, you can have talent and work, but really a lot of it comes down to being in the right place at the right time. And my whole career had a lot of great timing. Laura gives me a hard time about going, yeah. Just the timing of things for me within the sport, I was very, very fortunate. You know,
you kind of create your own luck, don't you?
Well, you do. Yes, you do. Don't get me wrong. You got to work hard. You've got to have some talent, and you've got to be well aware of opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you hear something, lean into it. I'm a big fan of leaning into opportunities wherever they are. And for me, that was, you know, 94 when we had the Triathlon Grand Prix in Australia, and it was live television and everything else, and you had to qualify. Well, the top 15 were invite, but the next 10 of us had to qualify. And I remember going around to the races around Australia, and I didn't have a lot of money, but getting to the races and knowing what I needed to do, and I qualified. And that was, you know, the Tui's Blue Triathlon Series, live television, sponsored by a beer company in Australia. And all of a sudden, I've gone from being somewhat of a professional athlete making a little bit of money as I'm studying at university to now I'm on national television, live television. I'm doing appearances for Hungry Jacks, who are also a sponsor, and boom, overnight. And I kind of go through my career, and then, we got into the Olympics. Then when I was done with sort of the Olympic thing, it was like Lifetime series started up. When Lifetime finished, then High V started up. So I was very fortunate to have great events around the world just kept popping up so I could continue my passion along the way. I didn't do 27 years of just ITU racing or just Lifetime. I got a really good mix, and a lot of that is because of just amazing people putting on amazing performances, events for me to be able to perform. Yeah.
The 2Es thing was major, wasn't it? Because I mean, it took a long time to actually replicate anything like that.
Yeah, it was. Well, you got Chris McCormack now doing.
Yeah, because he's tried to replicate that with super.
And he's doing a good job. He's doing a really great job, and now called Super Tri. I think they've changed their name from Super League to Super Tri, which I think is a better name. And yeah, we, Macca, he came on, I think 94 was the first year we had it with the 2Es Blue, and then it went to change names to become the GP series and the St. George and then Essentia. So the sponsors changed. And I think Macca came on in about 97, 96, 97. He really started coming in through that. Craig Alexander, Simon Whitfield, Hamish Carter, we all learnt our craft.
Yeah.
Racing and racing hard often in the 90s in Australia, because you'd race 3 times on a weekend, with 10 minutes between races. And we were so fortunate because we had people like Greg Welsh, who was already a world champion, Miles Stewart, already a world champion, Brad Bevan, who'd been winning the World Cup series the whole time. So I got to race as a young guy, 20, 21, 22, that my weekend racing were against the very best in the world every weekend. So I knew where I was.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'd get to beat one of them, and then slowly, over that next sort of through my mid-20s, I was starting to really compete with them. So yeah, we were very, very blessed in terms of what we had in Australia.
What do you think got you to that level? Because you obviously got to that high level relatively quickly.
Yeah, reasonably quickly.
Is it training with those guys as well, or?
Not so much training. I mean, you can't put in what God left out. I had a little bit of talent. I'm not like mega talent, but I had enough where if you were to test me, which I was tested back in 1990, 91, whenever Sydney got the Olympics, they went round and they started, it might have even been pre-Olympics. And they actually wanted me to go down to Adelaide that's where the National Centre for Cycling is for Australia. And it was the same group, O'Grady, McEwen, McGee. That was all my generator. We're all the same age. And they said, Greg, we want you in the pursuit on the track.
Yeah.
Because I have a reasonable VO2, but it's my ability to sit at a very high level of my VO2, even untrained. That was my talent. So I could hold a long time at my VO2. So, but I wasn't interested in cycling. In fact, that was out of the 3 disciplines, that was the one I didn't enjoy the most. I enjoyed the swimming and running. But then I think the thing that I loved is, one, I was really passionate about the sport. Like I'd be sneaking into the back of pubs to watch the USTS Bud Light series in America. I couldn't wait to watch the Kona Ironman on TV, which came out 6 months later. It was like you had to wait. This is all way pre-internet. And I was just like, it became the thing that I loved. And the mates that I had were all into it as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had this real passion. Then the second part to that is I didn't love the long training, but I love the hard, fast training. And I love to push myself harder and harder and harder. I just wanted to know what I could do, And so I think between that got me through that early part of my year, through the 90s. I think that combination, meeting Brett Sutton, my coach in 96, he was the national head coach for Australia at the time. That was an awakening that I needed of what actual hard training is.
You tried to break you on a treadmill once, wasn't there? Yeah,
I had a lot of workouts.
I'm sure there was a lot.
We could talk about, that treadmill session. That was probably the final time that I really trained with Brett. That was in 2000 as we got ready to try and get ready for the Olympic trials for the Sydney Olympics. Long story short, I didn't make to the Olympics in Sydney, and that's a whole other story. But that treadmill session, I remember turning up. We were in Christchurch, New Zealand, and there were two treadmills side by side, and it was a very small, dark lit gym. There was no one in there, and two treadmills going, and Brett didn't say much. He just said, "Greg, all right, today we're going to do 200s until you drop. And we're going to set the treadmill to 22.5K an hour, 1.5 or 1 degree or 2 degree. I can't remember what the degrees was, and basically 35 seconds on, 25 seconds off, or whatever it is. And then he went and sat down in a corner with a couple of newspapers, and I had one treadmill going, and when I got to about 30 or 40 of them, that one was covered in sweat, so I'd go on the other one and let the first treadmill dry off. And I got to say, the first 70 or so of them were really uncomfortable. Sometimes you just can't find your legs, and it was just brutal. But then once I got over that 70 to 80 of them, it was like I was completely numb, and I could have gone for all day. But after 150 of them, so 2.5 hours later, without a rest, I was just going boom, 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 and it was so robotic. He put the paper down and said, "Okay, Greg, that'll do." And we added up. It was about 38K. Really, it was one of those.
I was going to say that must have been a long way.
Yeah, it was a lot of running. And I was swimming a couple of hours later. It wasn't. I was very fit and very strong, but I think in terms of getting ready for the Olympic trials, I think I was fried. And that's all my fault. I should have done more on the recovery. I needed to take a bit more ownership of my training and my career. Brett's a coach, but he's not God. He can't tell what's going on in you.
Exactly.
And so I learned a lot from that. And so I don't blame Brett for anything. He was trying to get me ready to not only make the Olympic team, but to win the Olympic Games. And I think when I look back in hindsight going, wow, yeah, but that helped me become a better athlete for later on in life, because it was, you need to control what you can control. You need to make sure that, yes, you have input from other people, but this is your life and your journey, and you're the CEO of your own, this is you. You got to the CEO of your own body, and you need to run it like so. And so I learned a lot. That was, I did a lot of workouts like that with Brett. Like, that's one that people have talked about a bit, and I've just repeated it too. But we did tons of workouts like that, and they were fun because you wanted to see what you could do, right? But I think I did leave too many great races in training during that period, and I was with Brett for about 4 years, and a great chapter of my life, and one I have no regrets. It was really, really a good time for me to learn more about myself, emotionally, physically, mentally, the whole box and dice.
Yeah. Did you get a lot of help when you were younger on how to train, or when did you first get a coach? How old were you?
I had some great number one for me, coaches needed to realize that I love to play. Like, I'm a passion first, play, laugh, have a good time type person. I'm not if you give me a scientific physiologist coach to start, I wouldn't have had a career. I need the play. So I had my first running coach, Rob Higley. Rob Higley was known as the guru. And he trained myself, Simon Whitfield, who won the 2000 Olympic gold for triathlon. Craig Alexander was coached by him for quite a while. He got us all in those very early years. And I think if you look at all of our run form, you'll see that we all have very similar run gaits and everything else. And we would go for runs, we'd have Rob Higley and about 10 of his sort of track runners that are all 1,500 milers, 2 milers. And then you'd have myself, Simon Whitfield, sometimes Craig Alexander, and we'd run an hour and a half popping with no sound, and everyone has to be in time, right? Because Rob would spend, a good 3 to 6 months with the Kenyans, and then he'd come back, and some of the Kenyans would come back with him, and we'd all run as the Africans did, and we learnt to run with rhythm and bounding and timing, and we did hours of that kind of training. And I used to get frustrated because I felt like, well, I'm not getting fitter. I'm just learning to dance. It's like and if you think about it, running is the ultimate form of dance. That's how I look at it. Running, when done well, is the most perfect dance in the world. It's perfect rhythm and timing. And when you're running really well, you can almost feel your brain just tapping the top of your skull. It's like this boom, boom, boom. And so we learned that. We learned to run in those early years with the guru, Rob Higley. And he's actually been involved with a lot of triathletes over the last sort of 10 to 20 years. Coach Darren Smith, his whole squad would work with Rob. And so he was an amazing guy for me early on. Then my first triathlon coach was actually a guy by the name of Steve Buchberger. And Steve was just a guy that I met at the local gym and swim club. And, I'd work with Steve as my overall coach. Then I'd have Coach Graham Brewer, who was a part of the Australian mean machine in the 84 Olympics that won the 4x100 relay. And he was my coach. So my sprint swimming was off the chart because all I did was train with sprinters. Like I got which when you fast forward, when you talk about the Tooheys Blue Triathlon and the Grand Prix.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect.
My get out speed was amazing, but I also weighed, I was a bigger lad. I could take a hit. And so I'd have him. Then I had my bike coach at the time, it's going to come to me, and then I'd have Rob Higley, but I'd have Steve managing the whole lot. And they were my first little team. And then I had a great massage therapist that I worked with, and I built my team pretty early on. By 94, I already had a nice team of people, but they all understood who I was. Nobody pushed me.
Yeah.
I was
very self-motivated.
I was self-motivated. And what Brett quickly realized is I'm not somebody that needed motivation. I needed to be held back at times. Like if you're going to tell me to do 200s until you drop, that's a dangerous workout for me. It's like, okay, fine. I'm not going to ever drop. I'm going to go. And I had that mentality. I don't have it now, but back then it was, more is better. And I needed to be held back a little bit. And so some of those people in my life were just great mentors as well,
that's the thing you need, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I started it with that initial team for the first few years of my career. Then I moved to Brett Sutton and I went all in with Brett. And then after Brett Sutton, I moved to, I was pretty disappointed and a little bewildered after being left off the Australian Olympic team in 2000. I was ranked number 2 in the world. I'd won the Sydney event the year before and finished 3rd the 3 years before that. Like it was a course that suited me. It was, again, not blaming anybody, my fault. I should have been better. But then I remember just going, what am I going to do? And then my longtime friend, Simon Whitfield, said, Greg, why don't you move to Canada and help me get ready for the Olympics? And I just remember thinking, I'm either retiring or I might as well go to Canada, help a mate, and see if I can get my own career going back again. And, Simon and I were training really well together. I think I moved over there in sort of March, April, and his progress were, he was very talented, but needed maybe just a little bit of guidance with discipline. And, I don't want him to feel like I'm putting him down, but just, he was younger than me and just needed a little bit of a more mature guy. And we were working really well, and the Canadians saw that. And so then they thought, well, hang on, Sharon Donnelly's getting ready for the Olympics. We should bring a girl in for her. So they brought this girl up by the name of Laura Reback to train with Shannon. And that was, now Laura Benett. And I remember just seeing her on pool deck going, who's that? And so I look at that whole 2000 experience as, one of the biggest disappointments of my life, my career, becoming one of the most positive and greatest experiences of my entire life. And I got the girl, and one of my very best mates went and won the very first, the first triathlon Olympic gold medal. And I remember being in the stands, holding a little Canadian flag because I was down there as first reserve for the Australian team. And I remember just being like, I remember when he turned onto Macquarie Street and had about 1 kilometer to go, slightly downhill. And we'd been practicing downhill running. Downhill running was my natural talent. And so I was training with Simon for months. and practicing Macquarie Street downhill, the right degrees, everything, just practicing, practice. And I also knew that Simon had the fastest finishing kick in the world. And I think to this day, I still think he's probably got the fastest finishing 200 to 300 meter out of anybody in the sport of triathlon. And so I knew when he came charging down Macquarie Street, and then he took the front, I was like, he's won. And I remember our coach, Lance Watson, who I was working with as well. I was using Lance more as a consultant than a coach, and we were just hugging and crying, and it's like, wow. And then I'll never forget. And that was Simon's first ever big win. He'd never won a World Cup. He'd never, and I remember when he got off the dais, and he stepped off the dais and he ran over to us. This is before 9/11, so there was a bit more of a flexibility in what people could do. And he came up and we were kind of down near the front of the Opera House stairs there, and he came over and he put the medal around my neck and said, "Greg, this is yours." And it still gives me goosebumps. Like if you say, what's a career highlight? Well, watching one of your good mates win the Olympic gold and put it around your neck and say, "Hey, this is yours." You're like, oh, that was pretty cool. So I kind of, that whole campaign going into the Olympics and then coming out of it, and there was court cases and everything else. Like it was to then finish with one of your very best mates winning the Olympic gold. And Simon and I still probably chat every couple of weeks. He was a groom.
Yeah, I was going to say if you still talk to him.
Yeah, we chat a lot. He's moved into the tech world. I'm in the tech world now, and so we're bringing a lot of what we've learned in the past from sport into business. And and then I got this remarkable woman in my life. There isn't a day I don't practice gratitude and just go, wow. I joke with her. I wake up every morning and she's still there. I'm like, wow, she still hasn't woken up. She still hasn't woken up. And I love it. So that's it.
I really love that. And to be honest, that was probably one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on, actually, was about your relationship, because I find that, just the way you speak about her and your relationship is I find that really, really inspiring for a lot of people, because I think there's a lot of people out there who they might have difficult relationships or they're in the wrong relationship or whatever it is. But, I think the general consensus is from an outside perspective is that, there's all these little sayings about marriage which are negative. And I think as you go through life, like, you just have a lot of negative connotations for marriage and that sort of thing, and relationships and everything else. And then when you come across you, it's really refreshing to get that, she's like amazing and everything else. And I just really love that kind of energy around that.
Yeah, look, I always say I'm never going to be the one that gives marriage advice, really, or finding, how do you find the right person?
Yeah.
I look at the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, and go, thank you. Right. Mine wasn't, I'd had relationships before that were tougher or whatever. And this one, I think that's the whole point of dating, is kind of figuring out what you don't want. Right. It's like, okay. And what's really important to you. And so when Laura and I met each other, we kind of knew what we wanted. That didn't mean that the first year or two, there wasn't a lot of, like, because we wanted to make it work, there was more heated discussions and trying to figure each other out. And then, we're big advocates on communication, and building that trust over time. And, I think at the end of the day, she's fairly laid back. I tend to be a bit more the jazz hands and a little bit more, over the top, but I think we balance each other out pretty well. I celebrate Laura not only as one of the world's greatest triathletes to ever do the sport, and don't get me wrong, she'd rather a lot more world titles and Olympic golds, and but she was up there for a long time too, and consistency was amazing. But I look at her as being a mum, and nothing she did in sport compares to how great of a mum she is. Like, it doesn't even register, and I said this to her this morning as we were driving home from the gym. I just said, you're just amazing. Like, and that's the other thing. I think we spend a lot of time empowering each other and celebrating each other's strengths rather than kind of pointing out the weaknesses. I kind of feel like pointing out the weaknesses is easy. Yeah. And for the most part, people know that where they're weak. And it's a game we often play. It's like, sit down every 6 to 12 months and actually just say, hey, let's point out 5 strengths in each other. And, they might be the same 5 that you do every year, but sometimes it's just nice to have somebody say, hey, you're not a bad conversationalist, or you're not, uh, that's been some of the better stuff we've brought into our relationship is, or even in the parenting side, we often give each other high fives, and yeah, I know it's a bit silly. We're like,
Got them to sleep at last.
well, it's almost like, look at this kid. He's just being so adorable right now. We're crushing it as parents. And the next minute you want to be throwing him against the wall. But those little celebrations, you're like, let's acknowledge them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it, like anything worth doing, it takes work, and
Yeah.
it takes a consciousness to say, I want this to work. If you don't have a great relationship, quite often it's, one, you're not communicating, but two, you're not kind of you're not putting the time and the effort into making it work.
Yeah.
And that can be in business. If you've got a business partner that's tough to work with, you know, are you being transparent, for one? I feel like everybody's always hiding that many cards that nobody's fully transparent. And it's like, be transparent, spend some time on really understanding what the other person wants, and provide that for them. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here. I am not a perfect man, father, husband. I am not perfect by any means.
But that's what drives you to be better.
Of course.
Because if you thought I'm the bomb, you're not going to put any effort into,
I'm good.
trying to be better.
Yeah. Put my arms back. No, it's like, yeah, you're constantly trying to be better. There's a lot of things that I don't love about myself, and you kind of go, okay, let's try and work on those things. For me, I'm very much a habitual type person. I don't operate well in a crazy environment. I like to have my structure. People that listen to my show will know that, every morning up at 4 a.m., I fill the water jug, go outside. I do my little Korean exercises and deep breathing and ground myself barefoot. And then I practice all my gratitude. And that gratitude, it only takes a couple of minutes, because I run through it all, and I really try and just feel it in my gut, not, that gut brain biome. It's like, it's not just saying I'm grateful for this fresh air and running water. It's like really recognizing how special it is to have fresh air and running water and food in the fridge and a loving wife and family and a roof over all of those things. And if you actually feel it, and then I finish my gratitude by coming in, and as I walk in the house going, okay, today could be my last. How do you want to live it? Being very conscious that time is our number one commodity.
Yeah.
And it can be taken from us immediately, or somebody in your life can be taken from it. We've all had lost loved ones. That happen in tragedies that happen quick. And I'm very conscious of that every day. I start by making sure I'm consciousness of it every day, by walking and going, today could be your last. How do you want to live it? And it's, I feel that's helped me by doing that. I've been doing that probably about since I retired, to be honest, fairly consistent every single morning. Just get up and first thing, go outside, ground myself, do my gratitude. And that could be prayer. It could be however you want to connect with the universe and others around you. It's been so great for me to just have that gratitude and get that real slapper perspective to start the day. It's been really helpful. But again, not perfect, mate.
But I think I'm desperate. I'd love to get up at 4 a.m. because I'm good at in the morning as well, and I'm getting there slowly. But again, you kind of got to have your
or whatever your time is. I don't mean to mention 4 a.m. as a time that everyone should do. I actually think some people are more productive at night. If you're a creative, a lot of the creative guys I know, or the hustlers, the people that know how to get stuff done and they hustle, the next level hustle. Like our ex chief operating officer at Any Question, the tech company I was in, he was amazing between kind of that 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. And he was still fit and healthy and everything, but that was when his brain operated in such a way that he felt fantastic. And it was great because I was waking up at 3 or 4 and I'd get his emails and Slack messages and then be like, oh, boom, boom. Like it was like we didn't miss a beat. But I know I'm awful. I'm absolutely horrid after 4 p.m. to communicate, to have ideas. It's not good. I just knew. And that's where I was going to the gym early or working out early. I'm like, hang on, no. My brain's really on. Flip that around. So now I work between 4 and 6:30. And then I'll get have breakfast with the kids, get them to school. And then I go to the gym with Laura at 8 till 10. And that's my time. And then I have no meetings until, 11 a.m. We're recording at 11 a.m. It's like 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. is my time for the meetings and talks and tasks and everything else. So, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like in that same thing where I get up early and go for a walk and stuff, but go for the dog walk but it is that prime brain time almost, and it's like I kind of want to. Yeah, it's just trying to get into a better habit almost, but I do really like. So I go to so the one thing as well is like because I work from home and work for myself, or I've got a business, but I work from home, but it's about kind of going, okay, so the best thing for me is a quiet gym, like for my own brain and everything else. So like I'm going to go to gym during the day because I also put exercise at the same level as everything else. So it's as important to me. So it's not, I don't go to gym for fun or everything else. Like I go to gym to stay sane and not kill people.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't have a good experience going to a busy gym at night. So like, okay, well, I'm going to go to gym in the middle of the day, but it gets me to break it up as well. So I can work for an hour and a half, whatever else, and do a good session, then go to gym and then work. And I'm a lot more productive doing that than trying to work.
You're like I am, man. You're exactly like I am. My work just starts a little bit early because I just got to do it before the kids wake up. I love that before chaos. But I'm like you. It's like it's nice to have that gym in the middle of the day, and sometimes Laura and I will go to gym and then we'll play tennis. We play 40 minutes of tennis, not much, but enough to run around and we're so competitive. It's we laugh at how bad we are. Like you want to throw a racket or something. You're like, oh my gosh. We get to neutral pretty quick. You kind of, it's like, oh man, we need to get a grip. This is not good. But I do love that middle of the day, back for yourself. For me, it's as much social with Laura. It's our date time, if you like.
Yeah.
We don't do dinner dates. We kind of do tennis dates, and the kids are both at school, so we can kind of just spend that time together. And yeah, I think you've got to prioritize these things. Like even as I'm sort of building a new business now, and I talk to myself in the morning, I talk out loud actually when I do my gratitude. So if you ever walk past, you'll hear me talking out loud. But I like it. It kind of reinforces it.
Yeah.
And, as I'm building a business, I'm saying, right, I need this business to work in such a way that it doesn't impact my health or my family, that they stay as priorities, that it works in a way that gives me great purpose so I can unleash my potential to the world. Like I believe we all have potential that the world needs us.
Yeah.
And you need to feel like you are being of value and of service to the world, that you're useful to the world. That's my thing. I have a couple of mates that are like, I want to live to 150, the longevity group. And I'm like, well, does the world want you? Does the world
want you for 150 years?
Yeah. It's like, and a lot of them have never thought about that. And I'm like, well, I'm all about health span. Don't get me wrong. Maximize the years you have left. But I don't need to live for 150 years. Either I can have impact on the world with the time I have, and I'm useful to the world, as Arnold Schwarzenegger would put it. I'm useful and I'm valuable. Otherwise, we don't need another 52-year-old man just hanging out. Like we don't need another one of those. Either you're
system.
Yeah. And that's where, for me, being a dad was so important. It was whether you're the father of your own children, I do believe a man, and this will be a bit old school, and I might have people writing me in going, Greg, you shut up. But I do believe as a man, it's our role to protect.
Yeah.
To protect children, all children, whether you're a father or not. Like I take that very seriously. And the more I've put that in the universe, the more I've had to protect. It's been amazing. I've had, saving kids drowning, all sorts of things. I said, my role as a man is to protect children for sure, women, and some women might not, and for people that just can't protect themselves. It's like, and you put that out, if every man would start putting that out in the universe, I'm here to protect, provide and protect, but protect. And look, I'm I'm not a big muscly guy. I just mean being conscious of those around you in a way that you can create a place that they can thrive.
Yeah.
You know, I believe Laura, to thrive as a mother, needs to know that she's provided and protected.
She's safe. Yeah.
She's safe, and she doesn't feel like she has to go work, or she wants to be a mother. It's like, okay, it's my job to make sure that that is an environment where she feels like she can really flourish. Anyway, I'm going off on topics all over here.
No, I love this, because this is exactly the kind of thing
Yeah.
that I love, and because I strongly believe, you know, that you know, our ancestors. So we come from being cave people, basically living in caves and everything else, and that was the natural way. The natural way was that the man or the men would look after the tribe, and they would look after the kids and the woman, etc. Because, you know, their role was to hunt and bring the food, and the woman's role was to bring up the kids and look after the kids, and to go foraging and cook the meals. You know, so that was the way that the tribe all thrived together.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we maintain that link to our ancestors of where we came from.
Yeah.
Because when we try and screwdriver it to something totally different, it breaks the natural way of things, and I think it causes confusion and problems.
And I'll just add to that, because I want to make sure we're clear that I believe in the masculine and the feminine more than the male and the female. So
Yeah.
I know now with a lot of women in particular, they have maybe a bit more of a masculine energy, and they want to be a CEO of a big company, and they want to work, and all I'm saying is that play that role, but ideally for that role to work in a family environment, the man would just lean into his feminine energy a bit more, which we all have. Just lean into it. I'm not saying that you're a feminine man. I'm just saying lean into taking more responsibility as the caregiver in the house, if that's the way you want to do it. And that can work equally as well.
Yeah. No, there's definitely families that work that way. And
100%.
Well.
100%. And I love looking back at ancestral health for everything. I was talking to a mate in the gym yesterday about training, and he's like, we were talking about training and nutrition and everything else. I said, listen, what are you, 250 pounds? Like he's a monster, strong man. And I said, look, you'd be the guy with the spear right under the woolly mammoth, just stabbing. And I said, see that guy over there? You know, he's like 5'6", but also muscular. I said, we'd be catapulting him onto the back of that woolly mammoth, stabbing him in the back. And I said, look at me. I said, I've put on about 25 pounds, 12 to 15 kilos since I was racing. I said, I'm the guy that would carry the meat as fast as it could back to the village. Now, when you break it down like that, we all need to approach the way we train, the way we fuel very differently. Right? It's like the big, strong, masculine, 6'4" Goliath needs to walk to the woolly mammoth after our scouts have found it, and then he's ready to go, and he's all go. And then he needs to recover and make his way back slowly to the village. So the way he fuels is very different to the way you're built, like I am. Like we're endurance athletes, right? And you have a background in triathlon as well. So you and I, our responsibility is we may be stabbing the woolly mammoth, but it's more about getting that meat fresh back to the village, And so it's kind of, I love always painting a picture of our ancestors, because our DNA only evolves every kind of 1,000 years or so. We're evolving very slowly.
Yeah.
And to think we can just click a switch and go, oh, we're all going to play this role now, and just because it's like, no. DNA always wins. We can try and create a society in which we think things should work, but DNA is always going to play its part.
DNA will always win.
Yes, always. Yeah. It's still got to catch up to the kind of way we feed ourselves these days, and all the environmental toxins and everything else we are putting in ourselves. But don't need to.
But that's the whole thing about the grounding, etc. Is that's that's where we came from. That we were walking barefoot on earth, and that's what we were designed to do. And I think that's the big thing. That we weren't designed to sit at a desk all day.
No. We're designed to be outside. But look, you're in cybersecurity, correct?
I'm in tech, yeah.
Yeah, you're in tech. I've been in tech for the last few years, and I spent a lot of time here, or I'm recording podcasts and everything else. And for me, it's my little guy. I'll come home. He does half days at school, but I'm like, okay, take him outside. And we do running races to the letterbox. He's 4 years old, but it's like it gets me outside.
Yeah,
get some sunlight. I get to have that interaction with him, which he loves. And it's like, okay, got to keep getting up, getting outside, moving, sunlight and ground therapy, breathing, all the things that we've sort of stopped doing, which aren't that hard, it's just going, oh, yeah. But again, I'm habitual. So I know when he comes home from school, this is what I do. Otherwise, I'm getting stuck here for hours because you do. I mean, you do. Yeah.
The other thing as well, I think, just going back to your relationship as well with Laura, is about being mature. And I think when you're an athlete, I think that gives you a sense of maturity, because you kind of have to learn to do a lot of things quite quickly, and you have to, you're probably traveling by yourself and going away to these races, and if you want to do well, you can't be drinking and doing all these crazy partying, all the rest of it, because you have a very clear goal in mind. And that comes with a lot of maturity, and I think that's really important in relationships. And that whole, because we have in this world, we have 70-year-old people acting like kids because they've never really grown up.
Yeah.
And that's that thing, and I call it, sport, I think, does a lot. And I think I'd like to say the army does a lot, but I think it also causes a lot of trauma and actually probably causes more damage than good. But I talk a lot about certain tribes where they have an event where a boy turns to a man and a girl turns to a woman. They have that event, and I think that's what we miss in Western cultures, that you don't have that definitive time where they go, right, you're now a man. Your job is now to provide and protect and to do X, Y, Z, for your tribe or your family or whatever it is. And I think that's what's missing a lot. And
yeah, it's a good point. I think as an athlete, to some degree, you're forced to ask yourself important questions that we should all be asking all the time. And that the first one is, do you know who you are? And that's really hard. And that's why sometimes it's nice to play that game, like I mentioned earlier, where you use your spouse or somebody close to you, a mate, doesn't matter, and just say, look, I want to catch up and have a coffee with you, right? And I just want us to say 5 things that we think are our strengths or your strengths. So you and I would sit down and I go, Colin, I think your strengths are blah, 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 blah. And get over the awkwardness of it, because it's so empowering, and it gets that person to go, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? And then once you have people identifying your strengths in you, then you can kind of tap into them and make them flourish. Because I'm all about, if we can just have everybody unleash their true potential.
I'm all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
so much behind that. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first question. Do you know who you are? And again, ask yourself that question often, because you're often changing. After our conversation here, we're both changing, right? So it's a constant question. Do I know who I am? But then the second part to that is, do I know what I want? Which is equally tough to answer sometimes, going, well, what do I want? And this has been really good for me since becoming a dad, even, where I'm like, okay, I want to be a great dad and father, and I want to be present. I'm an older dad. I'm 52 with a 4 and a 6-year-old. So now I'm like, okay, well, now my health. Before, my health was a priority, but now it's like, whoa, I don't want to be a burden to my children.
Yeah.
I was selfish enough to have children late. I do not want them to have to be looking after me in my 70s and 80s. So now health is now a big, and when you go, those are the 2 things that are going to be with us now. They're permanent. Everything I do in terms of work, they're all temporary. Work, money comes and goes. It's and you're going to have great times at work, great career shifts, great moves, maybe your own business, maybe you work for somebody, whatever it is. It's ebbs and flows. It goes everywhere. And that's where it's like, okay, make enough money to provide, because that's the way we live in the world. You need to have some money to provide. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, and make sure that you're unleashing any potential that you do have to the world. So you have this sense of purpose.
Yeah.
There's nothing great about a man sitting around at home. I got told this by a 87-year-old Hungarian woman who was in the 56 Olympics, and a great story. She's like, Greg, there's nothing more unattractive than a man without a purpose staying at home, and it's like, so I'm quoting somebody, don't reference me on that. It just stuck with me going, because I've been that man. Like, I had a little bit in the wilderness after I retired from sport, and I was kind of just, I
wanted to ask you about that sort of transition.
Yeah.
You have that purpose, and then you suddenly like, oh shit, You don't have to go training today. It's like, well, what else am I going to do?
Okay, you've just hit my favorite topic of all, and this is transitions.
Yeah.
And it's transitions where whether your career changes, you're moving locations, you're getting married, you're having kids, all of these big life-changing things. And there's a lot on sort of helping the military get back into civilian life. That's one area that people are really working on. There's not a lot actually for professional athletes that retire. And, being here in South Florida, I'm around, professional athletes who are, hockey players, golfers, tennis players, and they're all retiring. They're retiring with a lot of money. And money is almost the worst thing when you're trying to find new purpose, because it's like, I don't have to do that, or that's beneath me,
it actually hinders you.
It can hinder you. And the other thing is I don't look at it as just, oh, Greg's identity is entrapped in being a triathlete. It's not just identity. It's that for 27 years, I got my serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins. My cellular chemical makeup was from doing something for such a long period of time, for whatever, 70% of my life had been focused on doing that at its chemical, hormonal response to something, you can't just go, okay, let's just replace that and do it with something else. Now, Laura, who retired on the same day I did, went about becoming a mum pretty quick. All of a sudden, her oxytocin, serotonin, endorphin, everything is about motherhood. Her transition was it really was fast.
Yeah.
And for me, it did take me a little bit. And I got to admit, if I really want to be honest, I was a bit disappointed in myself, in the sense that I thought I would have done a better job at it, that I thought I was more prepared, and I don't think I was. And I went for jobs, like high performance jobs with USA Triathlon and Triathlon Australia, and I didn't get them. I remember going, who knows more about high performance triathlon than me up there?
Exactly,
It was this real awakening to going, no, the fact that you've been to the Olympics and had a career, you got to have that. And now it gives you one step in a direction. Like, the benefit of being a professional athlete and Olympian is I'm not standing at ground zero, but I'm one step above. But when you look at the staircase, which goes, what? You don't get to start at the top of that staircase. You just one little step. And recognizing that nothing is beneath you, because as an athlete, you put on this pedestal and you're made to feel like, woo. And then it's like going, and so for me, it took a little bit to go, no, it's time to rebuild, break down who I was and rebuild, and do things that scare you and keep moving. And I remember reading a Chris Rock quote, and you might know it, but he talks about has a car that breaks down all the time on the highway, and he puts his thumb out and nobody ever stops to pick him up or help him out. And then one day it's pissing down rain and he's got to push his car to go under an overpass. And he gets out and he just starts pushing his car. And then everybody stops to help him push the car, because people want to be around those that are helping themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I started, I was coaching and doing bits and pieces, but I still never felt like I was unleashing my potential, as like I'm talking about. And it was really the catalyst for me was when I was doing some commentary work for NBC Sports for the Kona Ironman. And I remember going, okay, I'm going to call Jan Frodeno, Tim O'Donnell, and Sebastian Kinley, 3 good mates, get them on the phone. And it was my conversation with Sebastian Kinley. Went for an hour and a half. So Sebastian had won the world champs, I think, 2013, but he'd always been there. He was always the one of the key players. And I had this 1.5 hour long conversation with him as he was getting ready for Kona in 2019. And I got off the phone. I said, Laura, I should have recorded that. And so I thought, I'm going to start a podcast. Knew nothing about podcasts. But what I did is I reached out to 20 mates, that were either sort of Olympic or world champion type athletes who I'd been to the Olympics with, or coaches, and said, look, if I start a podcast, would you come on? And all 20 of them said yes, which blew my mind for one. It made me feel very special that, I'm fans of the guys that I used to race. And so I just started hitting record button. And then, right at the start of 2020, January 6, 2020, I put out 3 episodes, and then an episode every week since. And it's now in its 5th year. But by doing that, so this is a long story, isn't it? But by doing that podcast, I met a guy by the name of Ed Baker.
Yeah.
Ed had done very well in Silicon Valley. He was the head of international growth at Facebook. Before that, he'd started his own company called Friendly, which Facebook had acquired. Then he moved over to a small little limousine company called Uber Cabs and became the head of product and growth at Uber. And anyway, he was really enjoying
Made a few pennies there.
He did all right. He had a couple of good exits. Anyway, he really liked the podcast, and there's even more to that, but I won't go into it. But anyway, we got to chatting, and we decided to start our own tech company together, called Any Question, which basically said, Greg, you get to interview all these high performing people in the world. Why can't I? Why can't everybody have access to these great minds? And why don't we build a platform where we bring on these world leading experts and anybody can ask them questions and look at all their answers and blah, blah, blah. So we built this platform, 1,200 world leading experts we had, 60 different channels, everything from triathlon, swimming, biking and running to wine and spirits and pets and everything else. And we had world leading experts, and they all grew from me and this network just growing out. And that was really cool. And then we were acquired by Whoop about 3 or 4 months ago. The point of all of that is, like, if you can move, get out there in the world, put your face out there like you're doing with your podcast and your books and everything else. It's like people want to get behind people that are trying.
Yeah.
Just try. And honestly,
it's about taking action, isn't it? When they see someone taking action, they go, okay, let's, because it's about meeting you halfway. Because I'm very much like that. Like, someone will come for me for an opportunity and I go, well, okay, I'll meet you halfway. You do something, and then I'll meet you halfway, and then let's see where this goes. And then you see that they don't do anything. It's like, okay, well,
yeah. Well, I think it's just more like, look, life is short. Start with that. You're going to die here soon. It's happening, and it's not to be morbid. For me, I get truly motivated by death. It's like, when my dad passed.
It's very natural, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember my dad passing and just going, and it was a celebration, his funeral with my brothers. It was a good time. My dad was an awesome man. We loved him. Don't be wrong. I still make myself cry. I'd love to be able to chat to my pop.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay. And we've lost mates on bikes, crashes, and all sorts of things, right? I mean, the sport of triathlon.
It's dangerous. Yeah.
And you go, look, live. It's like you got this opportunity, and it's like, and live doesn't mean you got to be going 24/7 and never be present and you futuristic. It's like, no, look, Sunday afternoon, guess what I love to do? Turn on whatever golf is going on the Sunday afternoon. It's the 4th day and the pressure's on. And I sit back for 3 hours and hardly do anything while Laura's cleaning the house. And I get in a bit of trouble, don't get me wrong. But I love to just do nothing too. Like, I'm pretty good at being lazy, if you want to call it, and doing nothing. And so, but owning it, right? Being intentional about your behaviors as you go along.
Yeah, I think it's important because I get that, because I'm not 100 miles an hour, like all the time. You're just trying to do stuff until basically you break, and then you just like half unconscious. But it's important, I think, to be able to take those breaks consciously, like you say, and actually go, okay. And I get that kind of voice though. It's fine to take a break. You don't have to be 100 miles an hour all the time.
More than fine, it's necessary.
Yeah, it is necessary.
Definitely. I mean, ancestral health, think about it.
Yeah.
If you and I went out and we went and got ourselves a great woolly mammoth, which we would have got it. And we brought it back to the village, and it would have been a lot of work in that whole process of hunting it, bringing it back, storing it if we had, I think we're before salt, but if you could store it and carve it up and provide, that you would have had decent amount of time to decompress.
Yeah.
And you would have gone
for a bit,
and then you would have been just eating the fruits and the grain or whatever was around you, and you would have been, okay, we're going to go get ready and we're going to go again. And I think one of the problems we have in society is we live in this sympathetic nervous system. We go from one screen to the next screen and we're always on. Our brains are never actually fully allowed to be completely off.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we need to be on and be off. Be on and be off. And that was the beautiful thing about being a professional athlete. I say it to Laura all the time. I love being a pro athlete because it was, when we're on, we're 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
We're off, we're 0. We're in Normatec compression boots watching whatever Netflix series is going. And it was like, oh, this is awesome. And that's why I say one of the hard things about being a dad is kind of, I feel like now you live in a smaller vibration between a 3 and a 7. You're never fully on and you're never fully off because you've got the kids. I mean, especially when they're really young, they're getting a bit older now. But I kind of go, the more you can have that 10 and that 0 and own it, just be present in each of those. And again, I don't want to come preachy here. I'm not trying to be preachy because I'm not perfect. It's like I'll sit here and I'll play a game on my phone about, no, you're meant to be doing something. You're meant to be getting back to email. Come on, you can do better. And I'm a bit tough on myself sometimes, but and that's, I think, that people need to know is that what you see on Instagram, what you hear on podcasts, it sounds like people have their shit together all the time. We don't. Nobody does.
Just a snippet.
Just what we're giving is a little bit of advice, and but even Huberman or Peter Attia or whoever you listen to for your advice on well-being and performance, it's like, they're not perfect by any means. They're just giving you some tips, little tips, and it's about the process.
But I think in this day and age, I think that is, certainly with Instagram influencers, as they set out that perfection, and people basically break themselves trying to reach something which doesn't actually exist.
Doesn't exist.
And then they beat themselves up because they're like, well, I'm useless because I can't get there and everything else. And it's actually, well, it's just not reality. But just coming back to a point about, finding your purpose, and that's, that's what I'm very much about, people finding their purpose. And that is interesting as well, about, because you can't really say that your genius was being a triathlete, because you can't be a triathlete for 90 years, So there's got to be that evolution of what your real kind of genius is, and what your true purpose is.
I love that. I love that. You know who? Did you watch the Netflix of Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah, I love Arnold.
Okay.
I watched all his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So the beauty of Arnie, and some people are like, okay, he had an affair, he did all those things wrong. Okay, get that out of it. Now can we just celebrate?
He owned it. Yeah.
Okay. So, firstly, he's the world's greatest bodybuilder, crushes it, right? Then he goes and studies business. So the money that he's made, he can really invest and does quite well in business. So he's made money from that. He's got money there. Then he says, right, I want to do well in Hollywood, right? Can hardly speak a word of English, whatever. Like his accent's so strong. I only want to be a leading man. He only takes roles. It's just so cool. So then he goes and does that, becomes the greatest actor in the world. Then he marries the American royalty, and then he goes on to be governor of California. Now, he would have been president. I have zero doubt. Had he been born here, he would have been president of the United States of America. And you think about that, the guy and the way he built upon himself, and he was of service to others throughout a lot of that, right? It wasn't always about Arnie. And if you look about what he's doing, there's a lot of great things.
Well, the governor thing was purely about service. That was
purely. But look what he did. I love that he's gone so deep into politics, right? So much that you have to learn politics and the legal and the law. Here's a guy that he didn't go to college. It's like, he's a bodybuilder. Can you imagine how scary that would have been for everything you don't know? Like, we think we need to know everything. Like, if we're going to give a speech, we think we should know, we should be perfect. It's like, no. Progress over perfection, right?
But the unknown is where life lies.
100%.
Yeah.
I love that. 100%. And I feel like sometimes I've got to remind myself of that. I've been asked by a friend of mine to potentially give a talk at MIT for AI business. And like, me, AI, like, I've leaned in, but I love talking to people about the usage and how we can use AI and its benefits. I'm like, wow. And then I'm like, no, I need to get more information, but I am saying, yes, I'll give this thing a go. Whatever, you got Lex Friedman and all these other people giving talks there. And I'm like, all these professors and everybody, I'm like, whatever. What's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
Who cares? I get booed off stage. I'll go home. It's like, once you start to realize what the worst case scenario is, and I love to do that. I always love to go, what's my worst case scenario? It's like, oh, it's not that bad. But you're right. That's where life happens, on that edge.
Laura will still love you. It's fine.
maybe, depending how bad I screw up. No, I don't know. But Arnie, the reinventing himself really inspires me. It's kind of, look, I had my athletic career. I'm a dad, like I said, and I'm proud of that, and I want to be a good dad. I also want to make an impact in this tech space, in business. I feel like you know, when we got acquired by Whoop and things, I still felt like, nah, that's not everything. It's almost like, yeah, no, there's more here. And then we'll see what comes next. Maybe Prime Minister of Australia, if I'm going to really follow what I did. But look, I just think the important thing is to keep moving, realize that everybody's bullshitting to some degree. Like none of us entirely know what we're doing, but go out there and have some fun with it, you know?
I think that's so important about is that fun aspect. And you said that in your triathlon career as well, as about like, let's have fun. And that's so important to, rather than being serious all the time, because when you're serious, you contract.
Yeah.
And when you're having fun and you're more loose, and it's like, yeah, and you perform so much better. And my son's doing his exams at the moment, and I'm trying.
How old's your son? I didn't realize. Yeah.
He's 16.
Oh, yes.
And I was trying to say to him, like, you can't just cram and just be, you know, you've got to be more relaxed, and you've got to take a bit of break.
Okay. It's going to be okay, mate.
You perform better.
Okay. Yeah. And look, to a 16-year-old, you know, you remember being 16. It's like you think everybody's got their shit together, and it's like, look, I'm 52. I'm still trying to figure stuff out. Just do the best you can. Get up to a little bit of mischief. That's when you're meant to get up to a bit of mischief. It's when you're 16. Have a bit of fun. See what you think you can get away.
Get away with it then.
Yeah. And it's like, but have some fun. Have a laugh with your mates, and do the best. I say to my kids, it's like, look, listen and be respectful of the teacher. But don't feel you need to be perfect. You know, don't feel like, and if you're not perfect, we can always blame the teacher anyway. I'm just kidding. But it's like, I'm not after perfection. Actually, this is funny. My mum and dad used to say, I'm one of 3 boys. And they used to say to us, we're just trying to get you boys to average. Now, I ended up being a professional athlete. My brother was a professional rugby player, played in the UK and in France for a while. And it's kind of like, I used to think about it when I was an athlete going, well, that's a terrible mindset. Now I'm a parent. I get it. It's like, look, let's remove that expectation gorilla off the shoulders.
The pressure, yeah.
And let's just be free, go find yourself in the world, say yes to opportunities, and then see what happens, you know? And I think we need to probably do a little bit more of that with parenting as a whole. You know, this pressure on our kids. It's like, just let them be kids while they're kids.
Yeah.
Your point earlier, when it's time to man up, let's go.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you can't have fun.
No, exactly. But even when you man up, you still got to have that fun.
100%.
You know.
And you need a couple of good
but be responsible. Yeah.
And you know, we haven't talked about the importance of socialization and relationships in that sense, like communicating, having a couple of good mates around to spend some time with as a guy, for girls, a couple of girls to hang out with. But social is so important. And I've had my podcast has been amazing. 1 episode a week in my 5th year of just talking adult conversations with awesome human beings like this. This is great. I mean, I'm doing all the talking. I apologize. But it's like this. And now I've opened up what I call Fireside Fridays. And so anybody that wants to can book in a half hour. They usually end up being about an hour time slot just to chat. And I've done about 20 of them now. I started at the start of the year. And it's been such a gift because what I get to do is meet these people all around the world, realize everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a journey worth listening to. Just because you don't have a gold medal around your neck or you're not a high-flying entrepreneur, businessman or whatever, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
You know, I've just I get almost more out of them than I think I give. You know, it's like and I'm kind of recommending it to everybody to open up your Fridays, 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half, to just say, hey, anybody that wants to chat, I'm here. And that can be to your mates, you know, especially if we want to talk mental health and things with men. It's like, I think we've become so insular. I think we need to talk. And look, Zoom is one I'd prefer to be in person with you, having a beer or whatever. But this is still, it's a therapy. And I think men need that a lot. Yeah. Women also do need it, don't get me wrong, but they tend to go and get it. Women are better action takers, whereas men go, no, it's not happening, so I won't do it. Whereas this is why I'm like, well, if I open up on the Fridays, men or women, anybody can chat. And I love it. People write to me and go, Greg, is it okay if I book in a Fireside Friday? I'm like, yes, this is what it's about. And it's been really fun. So highly recommend anybody listening, anybody that is sat this long listening to us, open up your Fridays for your mates or anybody else to just say, hey, I'm open for an hour and a half for anybody who wants it. It's been really cool. Yeah.
I definitely, as you're saying, I definitely see there's definitely a book there. You know, there's a lot of content you got, you know, just with your podcasts alone is like huge content there, which is.
Well, you can help me. You're the amazing author. You're the amazing author. I can't wait to read your book. Is it on Audible? Have you done?
No, it's not on Audible, unfortunately, not yet.
Can you put it on Audible for me, buddy? I'm on Audible.
I know. I only listen to audiobooks as well, so yeah, I've got to. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love it. I love it. I really just do nonfiction books, a lot in business tech, you know, maybe some.
Actually, you like my book because obviously it's about educating you on cybersecurity.
That's what I read. I read all the reviews. Yeah. You got a lot of 5-star reviews too.
Yeah.
It's a good book. The only 1-star I saw was somebody who was like, oh, I feel like maybe they didn't understand any tech.
Exactly,
and they felt they were a little bit over. But as somebody who's I enjoy the whole tech space. I was like, it's all about a hacker that comes in, right? And then the cybersecurity guy realizes that there's more going on than just this one. Yeah, no, I've read all the bits, mate. It looks great. Yeah.
It's funny, you know, because as like you get a 1-star review and like I'm pretty.
I get them on the podcast now. You get 1-star reviews. It's like whatever.
But in the beginning, it's like your world just ends, doesn't it? You couldn't be strong enough to kind of take that on the chin and go.
No, but they just like when I read it on yours. Well, firstly, it was all 5 stars. Like I went to Amazon, it was all 5 stars, and I was like, oh, everybody always likes to go to the 1-star. I'm like, well, what's the 1-star?
Yeah.
And so you read it, and it's like, oh no, it was above him. It was above his ability to understand.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but what you do is you take that on board, and you go, okay, my next book or whatever, I'm going to make sure I soften it at this chapter or this chapter. I've learned that. I'll never forget my first 1-star review on the podcast. I was my ego was so burnt out of shape. I'm like, oh, Greg, because all I had is 5 stars. Greg, you know, and I goes 1 star, and I think it was a guy from the UK. He's like, Greg, you talk too much. It's not enough about your guests. And I thought, you know what? He's right. And so now I for a while there, I had a big note that just said, listen.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't something that came to me easily.
Yeah.
And it helped. So as much as it hurt, I was like, okay, my fault. I've gotten better at saying my fault, which has been really.
Had to learn that one.
No, it's freeing. It's like when you write and say, Greg, did you ever get my email? I'm like, my fault. And it's like, it's just own it.
But the thing is, when you do that, it just like, it just takes anything out of the.
It does. It stops.
It stops. Yeah, it's like, it's my fault. Okay, let's move on.
We got hit by a guy. We got a new car. We don't buy new cars very often. We got a new car, and we got sideswiped 10 days ago, and it was all his fault. He crossed the white line. We were both turning, and then as we're pulling over, and I got his number and everything. He was a good man. He And later on, I said, no, it was my fault. Even though I couldn't really find out how it was, but as soon as but it was a way to get myself to neutral really fast.
Yeah.
Basically, look, shit happens. Get back to neutral. And all of a sudden, like, yeah, whatever. Let's keep going.
But if it's someone else's fault, then you become a victim, don't you?
You can't ever.
And you have that victim mentality, and then it's just downhill from there.
And we've all been there. I've been that person that blames and complains and has played. Look, we all have. But if we can say things like it's my fault, if we can own it, if we can realize that we can adapt, if we can also realize that we're far more resilient than what the media or modern medicine or family members or anybody else, it's like we are so resilient. It's amazing, and if we can adapt fast, that's where the gift is. Who can adapt the fastest to their new reality? Yeah. I've been practicing that a lot, actually. It's really helped. Just going, okay, own it, move it, let's go. Get to neutral. I love that whole saying of just get to neutral. I'm not about being more positive. Just get out of that negative spiral, get to neutral. And it's helped a lot.
Yes, I'm finding that quite recently, actually. It's just when you don't think almost. And you're like almost present, and you're like going, I'm not going to make up any stories about whatever's going on or whatever else. I'm just going to be, like you say, just neutral. And yeah, okay, you can, I mean, I love the way that you set your intention every day, because it's like, this is what I want to happen. And I think that's incredibly important for a lot of people to do that. That's where your life changes, when you, because your focus creates your reality. So when you choose what you focus on, that's what you're going to get.
Yes. The universe is incredible.
Yeah. And when you focus on negative and complaining, you get more of that. So
and it's easy to do. I don't know, the genetics in us to be attracted to the negative is insane, isn't it? And you're like, it feels good. Like, no, get out of there, move away from that. And that self-love is so important. I start the day, and nobody's probably listening now, but now it's turning into me rambling on. But I often start the day being going, look, I'm grateful for my confidence, my what do I say? Well, it's all C's.
Yeah.
Grateful that I'm capable, charismatic, curious, communicator, conversationalist, and you just go through it. And I'm grateful for all of these things. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for every organ I go through them, my brain, blah, 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 blah. I even say, and you might not agree, I'm grateful for my personality. It's like whatever it is. And it just every day you just keep saying how wonderful you are. And it's not egotistical. It's just saying, look, I'm grateful for being me. And I think
it's about thriving, isn't it? And you touched on thriving before, and that's, we were put on this earth, firstly, to have a really good human experience, and secondly, to thrive.
Yeah.
We were not put on this earth to suffer. That's not why God or the universe or whoever put us on the earth, to suffer. That's absolutely wasn't the plan.
No, it is to thrive. No, it's look, I think, for me, it's just, I look at life as every day is very special, and I'm very fortunate to have the life I have, but I'm very conscious about the steps and the intentional actions that I take.
Yeah.
And look, good or bad, it helps you just own them. It's like, I've made plenty of mistakes, plenty of choices where I'm like, yeah, it probably wasn't the right one. But I'm like, hey, but you chose it.
Part of being human, though.
Yeah, you chose it. And that's once you realize you chose it, chose it, it really, it frees you to then just keep moving,
Yeah.
Well,
I don't want to take up any more of your time, because you probably talk forever. But
I could. I got my little guy. I got my little guy.
At the door.
I'll take him for a run outside, like I said, and go have some lunch. But it's been a real pleasure to get to know you.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for reaching out. Yeah, this is great. All the best with your books.
Yeah, thank you.
And your son with his exams. He'll be fine.
Hopefully get him to relax and just he's fine anyway. I mean, he's fine getting into it. It's just, it's just pressure that they have as in school, really.
I know they do that with our kids, and look, our 6-year-old, she's in kindergarten. She's got homework and getting report cards. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
We go to the parent-teacher conference, and they're like, Greg, you and Laura are so easy. I'm like, well, look, we've sent them to school to learn a little bit. But honestly, by the time they graduate, because I'm so deep in this AI space, I'm kind of, unless the school's keeping up, I don't know. I don't over stress about any of it, to be honest. So, they'll figure it out.
Yeah. The world's going to be a different place when they're leaving school.
It's already a different place, man.
Yeah.
I was talking to friends of ours that were graduating, marketing degrees. And I said, well, what third-party AI platforms are you using to create blah, blah, blah? And they're like, I'm like, seriously? You guys have just had a year and a half since GPT was launched, and there's been many other, and all these tools are coming out. I'm like, no. I'm like, come on.
But I saw this I'm trying to think, maybe 20 years ago, and I looked at marketing courses and business courses, and I was like I knew then that business evolves all the time. So it's very difficult to teach people, because by the time you've taught them, everything's evolved to something different. And that was 20 years ago. So now it's evolving 100 times quicker.
You are in the number one. No, seriously, the number one cybersecurity right now. Even the platform that I'm looking at building with a couple of MIT professors and very smart people, is my point.
Yeah.
Is, our biggest fear is what's the cybersecurity.
Yeah.
it's almost, I think, new tech companies now, the first hire and the biggest hire is going to be a CSO, not a strategy officer, a security officer. And that's where I think what you're doing is amazing. And your knowledge that you must have, I think we could talk for hours offline about, but just getting ahead of all of that. And if my kids wanted to do something that was a career move, I'd be like, go study cybersecurity. There's every company, every business in the world is going to want to have that more than a lawyer, more than anybody else. You need your data looked after. And
because it's what I call a business killer. It's one of those things that it happens and your business is dead overnight.
Individuals are dead. You know, what is it? 1 in 4 or something are getting hacked or more.
Yeah, it's you know, I stopped counting because it's every single day a big company gets hacked. Wow. And all your data that you've stored with them gets dumped on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's all the time. And that massive thing in Australia, the healthcare place. I'm trying to remember
which one was that? No, you'd have to tell me.
I can't remember now. I can't remember the name of them, but it was a big healthcare company in Australia.
Oh, wow.
And they got hacked badly. And they all try and cover it up and everything else, and then it all comes out in the wash eventually. And it's just a million times worse than people can ever imagine.
That's kind of what I'm trying to say. Yeah. That's why it's like, if you want a career move, it's huge. Yeah. I don't know. Tell your son, don't worry. Following his dad's footsteps, you'll be set. You're going to be set, because I think if a cybersecurity officer normally got paid whatever 300,000, is going to be 3 million in the next year or two.
Let's hope so.
Now I've got you. All right. Yeah. So this will be. You can help build out our team once I get this $100 billion company off the ground.
Thanks, Greg. Right. Really appreciate it.
It's been fun, buddy.
Yeah. No,
all right, mate.
Look after yourself and catch up again soon.
You too. All right. See you, mate.
Cheers. Bye.